Hello, this is Anna Imagination with a Healing Garden. Welcome to Shifting Perspectives. And if you are new to my channel, I am a philosopher, psychologist, sociologist of 30 years. And I have been manifesting since I was 4 years old. So I'm going to break down exactly what manifestation is, what it looks like, and how to do it. I rely heavily on physics for everything. I love physics. I adore it. And physics is very much a part of manifestation. In fact, physics is all manifestation. The link between manifestation and physics is your emotional energy. And once you understand the big picture of what emotions are, it makes a lot of sense about what manifestation is. Manifestation, and we are going to talk about the really big topic: religion, faith, spirituality. Ready? Versus science. All right. So as a philosopher, we're going to break this down for you. If you study philosophy, there is actually a section called theology. In fact, all religious studies, all of theology is a branch of philosophy. In addition, psychology is a branch of philosophy. Logic, formal argument, and debate is a branch of philosophy. You know what else is a branch of philosophy? Astrology. Astrology is a branch of philosophy. Now, I don't think we can get more diverse. Oh, there's one more thing. Geometry is mandatory for philosophy. So we're looking at psychology, theology, logic, astrology, and geometry, all being elements of philosophy. Astronomy is a huge part of this, as well as physics. So whenever I talk to anybody, there is philosophy, the unknown secret thing that's over there. There's people who took a couple philosophy classes in college. Let's break this down. Let's do this. So in philosophy, you have a few types of people. I'm no longer going to say two types. We're going to have a spectrum of people. I love that phrase, a spectrum of people. We're going to say that from now on. Follow me. I'm setting the example. A spectrum of people. No longer two types of people, a spectrum of people. These are some of the people on these spectrums. You have people who have never heard of philosophy. Welcome to my world. Then you have people who have read a little bit. These are also the people who may have taken 2 classes of philosophy. The next kind of person is the person who is a passionate hobbyist. And then the 4th type of person is me. A real, honest to God, awesome philosopher who literally makes it their life work. 30 plus years. So we're going to go over this. The people who've never studied or heard of philosophy are the people who are walking through New York City and they see the new philosophy billboards and they go, well, that's something, if they even notice it. It's literally just they are oblivious to the study of. They think it's dead. It is. It's dead. So they think it's dead. And then there's the people who may have attended 2 semesters in college. So they may have been able to cover an introduction to philosophy. And then there's the people who love to argue. They love to debate. I would place them in probably the 5th perspective of psychology. Maybe even 6th perspective of philosophy. The read, maybe gone to 2 classes, I would put them in the 1st perspective of psychology. So you have the 0 experience, you have the 1st experience, and you have the 5th and the 6th. The 5th and the 6th is basically people who love to have discussions on politics, Politics is part of philosophy. You've got people who basically haven't broken through that first level. And there's a reason why all of this is really vital to all of this is when you actually take it on as a full study, when you dedicate your life to this field of study, there is basically the graduation level. We're going to call this the 12th perspective. And it's not until you get to this perspective that you realize what philosophy really is. The first the zero perspective will say what's philosophy? It's isn't it like a philo is love of, isn't it Greek? They might be able to say that much. So love of wisdom is what people think it is. Now that is what the Greek word translates to, and that's about it. The first perspectives or second perspectives will, I'm actually really curious. I'm not going to hypothesize. I need to ask people. I'm going to start asking people, what do you think philosophy is? Oh, no. I almost want to stop this entire conversation right now and just walk around asking people, what do you think philosophy is? And that's the point. That is exactly the point. So I'm going to tell you 12th perspective what philosophy is. It is the mastery, not the study of, the mastery of knowledge. It's the mastery of knowledge. Obtaining knowledge, processing knowledge, teaching knowledge, storing knowledge, accumulating knowledge, deciding knowledge, filtering knowledge. It is the entire accumulation and mastery of knowledge. There are many fields of study. The first field is you have to know how to learn. The second study is you have to know how to use logic. The third study is definition. Counting your resources for obtaining knowledge. The fourth perspective is the study of perspective. Now, when you sit down and you accumulate all of this data, there is one topic, one question for study that's being presented in philosophy. I know too much about philosophy to not teach it. I know things about philosophy that Ayn Rand did not know about philosophy. Ayn Rand was closed-minded. Based off of her information on her ethics and her unresolved trauma, which I studied, Ayn Rand was a solid fifth perspective who lacked accountability. She had a problem with addiction, which put her at a deficiency in the first ethic. Ayn Rand also was very resourceful, so she definitely had the second perspective mastered. But she did not trust people. She manipulated them, and Ayn Rand was a narcissist. That's right. She was a grandiose narcissist, to be exact. She knew how to self-govern. Russia made sure of that. So she definitely had the fourth perspective mastered. But she definitely did not have the fifth perspective. She never held herself accountable. It was always everybody else's fault because Ayn Rand was a narcissist. So the last great philosopher of the 20th century, was a narcissist who lacked the first, third, and fifth perspective while mastering her own resources, the second perspective, and the fourth perspective. She had a significant problem with trust. She was manipulative and at times logical, but not always. In fact, she used logic to manipulate people, which is how she ended up manipulating Nathaniel Branden. I only have maybe 3 psychology books in my library because there are only 3 books of psychology that are actually valuable. This is Nathaniel Branden, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. The man is extraordinary. I just realized, yes, I have more philosophy books than psychology books. Nathaniel Branden, this beautiful man, was the lover of Ayn Rand for 20 years. Lover is an understatement. He was an empath who was studying philosophy, and he was a student of Ayn Rand in the 1950s. Ayn Rand he also was married to a woman by the name of Barbara Branden. Barbara Branden and Nathaniel were married. Ayn Rand and her husband Frank attended their wedding, and then shortly thereafter, Ayn Rand and Branden began a very open love affair. It was, and Ayn Rand boasted how it was going to be logical, it was going to be transparent, it was going to be ethical. So yes, she very much did have the sixth perspective, highly ethical, because she did value the people that she loved and understood that honesty, no, you know what, I got to think about that. Did she have the sixth perspective? She definitely had not yet learned accountability. But again, that's assuming that Dr. Graves' work is actually accurate. And I don't believe it is. I believe that Dr. Graves absolutely is wrong on a few fronts with the perspectives. So she decided to be very open and transparent about her feelings for Nathaniel. And she literally used her narcissism to bully Barbara, Frank, and Nathaniel into this 20-year love affair. It became highly toxic. Nathaniel Branden. Now, I did not know about what happened after that. I have no idea. I learned all this information from a book written by Barbara Branden called The Passion of Ayn Rand, which is a biography of Ayn Rand told by Nathaniel's wife. So I read that book in the year 1997 when I read Atlas Shrugged, when I read Anthem, when I read Fountainhead. Love Ayn Rand. Oh my God, do I. I love her philosophies. She had a significant hatred for Christianity and religion. She was highly scientific. She was in a movie at one point. She actually was an extra in Cecil B. DeMille's movies. So she's done acting and theater. In the 12th perspective, at the end of philosophy, the final lesson that makes you a master of philosophy is when, if you want to be a teacher, there is only one way to teach. It is humbling yourself. It is forgiveness that makes a proper teacher. Yeah, I know way too much about philosophy to not teach this. Forgiveness is how you become a good teacher. Now, forgiveness is an emotion you don't feel until the 10th perspective. So most people don't know what it means, which is why there's 18 million opinions out there. Oh, wait, I got this. There are 8 billion opinions out there on what forgiveness means because no one knows. The reason why no one knows is because we're all parroting forgiveness. We heard some guy named Christ talk about it in the Bible, but none of us have actually experienced it. And I'll say this a million times over, the only time I can actually see an example where I can point at it and say, that's forgiveness, is Les Miserables, Jean Valjean, which means Victor Hugo had it figured out. Victor Hugo would have it figured out. Victor Hugo was a philosopher. Victor Hugo would have it figured out. Oh my God, you beautiful man. which means Victor Hugo was of the 10th perspective. Didn't even think about it. Didn't even think about it. Oh my God, how could I? Because I was 12 when I read the book. I was about to scold myself how I did not pick up on this when I was a child. And it just occurred to me, well, of course you would pick up on it. I wouldn't pick up on it when I was 12 because when I was 12, I had not yet studied psychology or philosophy. I was 12. This is actually one of the very first books. Gavroche on the Marsh. Come on, Heart Beneath a Stone. Where are you, Cosette? Fontaine dies. Spoiler alert, Fontaine dies. Oh, here it is, Heart Beneath a Stone. It isn't even marked. Wow. All right. This is chapter 4, A Heart Beneath a Stone. Now, the way Les Miserables is created is by a soap opera, literally soap opera. So there's like 12 stories going on, and you keep jumping to all the different stories. The reduction of the universe to a single being, the expansion of a single being into God. This is love. He can see the dimensions. Oh, he can see the dimensions. He just described one of 12 of all. I am so happy. He just described in one sentence one of 12 of all. The reduction of the universe to a single being, the expansion of a single being into God. This is love. Mm-hmm. Love is the salutation of the angel to the stars. How sad the soul when it is sad from love. What a void is the absence of the being who alone fills the world. Oh, how true that the beloved becomes God. One would understand that God might be jealous if the Father of all had not clearly made creation for the soul and the soul for love. One glimpse of a smile under a white crepe hat with lilac veil is enough for the soul to enter the palace of dreams. God is behind everything, but everything hides God. Things are black. Creatures are opaque. To love a human being is to make her transparent. Certain thoughts are prayers. There are moments when, whatever the attitude of the body, the soul is on its knees. Separated lovers belie absence by 1,000 chimeric things that have their own reality. They are prevented from seeing each other. They cannot write to each other. They find a host of mysterious ways to correspond. They exchange the song of the birds, the perfume of flowers, children's laughter, sunlight, the sighs of the wind, the starlight, the whole of creation. And why not? All of God's works were made to serve love. Love is powerful enough to charge all nature with its messages. Oh, spring, you are a letter that I write to her. The future belongs still more to the heart than the mind. To love is the only thing that can occupy and fill up eternity. The infinite requires the inexhaustible. Love partakes of the soul itself. It is of the same nature. Like the soul, it is a divine spark. It is incorruptible, indivisible, imperishable. It is a point of fire within us, which is immortal and infinite, which nothing can limit and nothing can extinguish. We feel it burning even in the marrow of our bones, and we see it radiate even to the depths of the sky. Oh, love, adorations, light of two minds that understand each other, of two hearts interchanged, of two glances that interpret. interpenetrate. You will come to me, won't you? Happiness walks together in the solitudes. Blessed, radiant days. Occasionally, I have dreamed from that time to time, hours detached themselves from the life of the angels and came down to pass through the destiny of men. God can add nothing to the happiness of those who love one another, but to give them unending duration. After a life of love, an eternity of love is a superabundance. But to intensify the ineffable felicity that love gives to the soul in this world is impossible, even for God. God is the plenitude of heaven. Love is the plenitude of man. You look at a star for two reasons: because it is luminous and because it is impenetrable. You have at your side a softer radiance and a greater mystery. Woman, whoever we may be, we all have our living, breathing beings. If they fail us, the air fails us. We stifle, then we die. To die for lack of love is horrible, the asphyxia of the soul. When love has dissolved and mingled two beings into an angelic sacred unity, the secret of life is found for them. They are then but the two terms of a sacred destiny. They are then but the two wings of a single spirit. Love soar. The day that a woman walking past sheds a light on you as she goes, you are lost. You love. You have then only one thing left to do: to think of her so earnestly that she will be compelled to think of you. What love begins only can be finished by God. True love is in despair and in raptures over a lost glove or a handkerchief found, and it requires eternity for its devotion and its hope. It is composed at the same time of the infinite great and infinitely small. If you are stone, be lodestone. If you are plant, be sensitive. If you are man, be love. Nothing is enough for love. We have happiness. We wish for paradise. We have paradise. We wish for heaven. Oh, ye who love each other, all this is in love. Be wise enough to find it. As much as heaven, love has contemplation, and more than heaven, passionate delight. Does she still come to the Luxembourg? No, monsieur. She hears mass in the church, doesn't she? She no longer comes here. Does she still live in the house? She's moved away. Where has she gone to live? She did not say. What a somber thing not to know the address of one's soul. Love has its childishness. The other passions have their pettiness. Shame on the passions that make man little. Honor to what makes a child. Honor to what makes him a child. There is strange things. Do you know what? I am in the night. There is being who has gone away and carried the heavens with her. Oh, to be laid side by side in the same tune, hand clasped in hand, and from time to time in the darkness, to caress a finger gently. That would be enough for my eternity. You who suffer because you love, love still more. To die of love is to live by it. Love. A somber, starry transfiguration is mingled with this torture. There is ecstasy in the agony, a joy of the birds. It is because they have their nest, they have their song. Love is the celestial breathing of the air of paradise. Deep hearts, wise minds take life as God has made it. It is a long trial, an unintelligible preparation for the unknown destiny. This destiny, the true one, begins for man with the first steps inside the tomb. Then something appears to him and he begins to discern the definite. The definite think about this world. The living see the infinite. The definite reveals itself only to be dead. Meantime, love and suffer, hope and contemplate. Woe, alas, to the one who should have loved bodies, forms, appearances only. Death will take everything from him. Try to love souls, and you shall find them again. In the street, I met a very poor man who was in love. His hat was old, his coat was threadbare, there were holes at his elbows, the water seeped through his shoes, and the stars through his soul. What a great thing to be loved. What a greater thing still to love. The heart becomes heroic through passion. It is no longer composed of anything but what is pure. It no longer rests on anything but what is elevated and great. An unworthy thought can no more spring up in it than a nettle on a glacier. The lofty and the serene soul, inaccessible to common passions and common emotions, rising above the clouds and shadows of this world, its follies, its falsehoods, its hatreds, its vanities, its miseries, inhabits the blue of the skies, and no longer feels anything but the deep subterranean commotions of destiny, as the summit of the mountains feel the quaking of the earth. If no one loved, the sun would go out. The great books was my reading list when I was at university. Because I did not have Plato, because I did not have my master literally there in front of me that I could say, "Excuse me, professor, could you please recommend some reading material?" I instead used the great books. I thought, if it could withstand the test of time. I was 15 when I discovered the list of great books. And so I accessed the great books. I discovered classic literature. People will ask me, what's your favorite type of literature? And I will say, classic lit. This is not true. My favorite type of literature are the great books. So I went through and literally read more than half of the list. They say if you finish the list of the great books, you will have equivalent to a fourth-year liberal arts degree. This is wrong. If you finish the great books, you will have the equivalence of approximately 30 years of studying philosophy. That is substantially more than a 4-year liberal arts degree. The reason why the great books are great is because every one of them was written by at least a 10th perspective. Everyone. You don't get to go on and surpass mortality and not make it to the 10th perspective. I revered these men. I revered these people. Mary Shelley, she's a woman. Jane Austen, gross. Jane Austen. Okay, Jane Austen, on a philosophical point of view, was extraordinary. Mark Twain really missed the boat on this one. Ha ha ha. So here's how this works. Mark Twain hated Jane Austen. Me too. Her books were romantic dribble. No, they weren't. I thought they were. They were philosophical studies that explored the relationships of human beings. But I was so caught up on how disgusting dribble that she expressed this in that it's really hard to actually see the philosophy in a Jane Austen book. Pride and Prejudice, for God's sakes. How could I miss that? She explored the ethics. Oh, is it going to happen? I think it's finally going to happen. I'm actually going to finish Pride and Prejudice. It might happen. My sister and I both started reading this book at the same year. She loves the movies. I don't. I love Pride and Prejudice with zombies. That's what I love. I love Pride and Prejudice with zombies. Yes, that's what I call literature. I love Pride and Prejudice with zombies. So aside from Pride and Prejudice with zombies, my sister and I both tried to read the book. We couldn't. We actually got to the same point where they would literally talk about the weather. They talk about the weather in the book. They discuss the weather. They talk about the weather. And you're just like, am I really reading a book that was written over 200 years ago and they're discussing the weather? Really? How could this withstand the test of time? My sister and I both stopped reading at the exact same point. About 10 years later, we were talking about reading Pride and Prejudice, and we both went, "Oh my God, you read Pride and Prejudice? I tried. Oh, I tried too. How far did you get? The Wither. You too." So we made up a deal. Whoever was first to finish Pride and Prejudice would have to buy the other person, would have to be treated to lunch by the other person. I believe that bet was made 20 years ago. And now this is the first time I actually have decided I want to read Pride and Prejudice. So this is me now writing to my sister to say, I officially have the desire and need to read. Read has to be capitalized. Pride and Prejudice. 20 years ago, we made this bet. So I just texted my sister, I am going to read Pride and Prejudice, which means she's going to have to buy me dinner. So I'm going to do this because it's no longer about the romance dribble. It's about the philosophy that she buries in this book. I'm going to do this old school. I'm going to buy a book that's a paperback. Yes. I am going to disappoint Mark Twain. Now, this is interesting. Mark Twain, I really struggle reading his material. Oh my God, his writing is so fucking breathtaking and the racism is fucking disgusting. So I really struggle reading Mark Twain because he is so fucking racist. But my God, his words are breathtaking. If you can stomach the ethics. Interesting. He was also very condescending to Cooper. Oh my God. You know, he was kind of a fucking asshole. Ooh, look at that. My opinion of Mark Twain is changing. He was a pompous fucking asshole. I would almost say, Mark, interesting. Interesting. So, I just changed all of my branding on the Healing Garden. The Philosopher's Garden. Welcome to the Philosopher's Garden. That is what I should have called this. The Philosopher's Garden is the name of my business, officially. I need to process this. I have significant happiness inside of me right now. I found my home, I found my name, I found my brand, and I am so happy right now. You know when you find the right words and it just clicks and suddenly you feel it and you go, oh, that's the right, that is so right, and that feels good, and that gives me joy. I need a bottle of champagne. When you heal, there are stages you go through. The first stage is the knowing. The knowing is when you know who you are. The second stage is the belonging. That's when you find home and you know where you belong. 3 is the authority. It's when you realize It is when you realize your power and you claim it. You own it, which is the fourth. The owning. There's the authority, and then there's owning the authority. And the last one is the naming. And it's that last stage of integration of who you are that you finally step into the naming. I am the philosopher. And it's that moment where you suddenly realize, I'm a philosopher. I am a philosopher. You don't get that title. You are discipulus. Discipulus gave birth to the word disciple. Christ was a philosopher. Discipulus means a student or a philosopher, a student or a follower of philosophy, of a philosopher. It is a philosopher's student. That's it. Or a philosopher's, I need to just, this is equivalent to me realizing that I just graduated from Plato's University. This is me going, I'm no longer a discipulus. I am officially a philosopher. It is finally me realizing that I am on par with Nathaniel Branden and Ayn Rand. And it's this sudden realization. About 3 days ago, I had a perspective shift. I call it chapter 13 because I'm no longer counting perspectives. I'm just going to go by, I had a shift and this is how I'm going to track it. And it's so I can, for data purposes and research, it's basically so I can track the chapters that I'm in my life. And I like the idea of chapter because I do believe in the philosophy that we are story. And I have been a discipulus to Plato for 30 years. I started in 1995. And it is 30 years of asking questions, 30 years of managing and maintaining an open mind, 30 years of practice, silent listening. I was a Buddha. I was into Buddhism for a year. I examined the Age of Enlightenment. I have attended over 12 different religious ceremonies from 12 different religions because I wanted the different perspectives of Muslim. I wanted to see what Judaism looked like. I wanted to see what Christianity and Christianity and Christianity and Christianity and Christianity all looked like. I literally attended, I've sung at Catholic Mass as the lead soprano. An atheist philosopher sang lead soprano for a Catholic Mass. And I analyzed the psychology of the entire ceremony the entire time. I have attended several types of weddings from several different cultures. I am and have been discipulus my whole life. And it was my dream to be a philosopher. Now, I love philosophy. Oh, but to be a philosopher, to have this stuff mastered and integrated so deeply. Now, this is not a time period that allows, welcomes, or wants philosophers, especially a female one. So things got ugly. And I was reading a book the other day. Well, not the other day. This is about a year and a half ago. My partner had a book called What Color is Your Parachute? So I read this book. It's a beautiful book. Oh my God, is it beautiful? What Color is Your Parachute is phenomenal if you don't know what direction you want to take in your life. Holy shit, read this book. So I read What Color is Your Parachute? And I walked away from the experience realizing I wanted to be a philosopher. And it was October of last year. I was at a camp. I went to a cabin in the woods with some girlfriends. We bonded over story. We lived as bards. Then we talked, we discussed it. And I was like, I want to be a bard when I grow up. I want to be a bard. I want to be a philosopher. I want to be a philosophizing bard. I want to be a bardic philosopher, the bardic philosopher. And the best thing about philosophy that I later learned was that you can't be a philosopher unless you're a bard, which is why they had so much art that they learned. So what we think is philosophy and what we think is bards and what we think is, oh, the perspective got lost and you don't understand this lesson. There are milestones when you study philosophy, just like any other subject. You're expanding out your mind. But what you don't know, what most people don't know, is philosophy, when you span out your mind, you realize that you are taking in the all of knowledge of the world and then some. And you are looking at every subject from every perspective. That's philosophy. So you have to be an artist, and you have to be a writer, and you have to be an actress, and you have to be an astronomer and a physicist and an astrologist and an astronomer and a biologist. You have to be a physicist. You have to study the brain. You have to study anatomy. You have to study all the subjects. It is a lifetime of mastery of just education, and you do nothing else. So while other people are working, you are doing nothing but learning. Your education, your life, your job is learning. A professional student. There's a point, I call it the valley of shadow of death. I love the phrase, it's the valley of shadow and death. I want to write a book called Shadow and Death. We think it's valley of shadow. That's what we hear, the valley of shadow. No, let's really break it down. Shadow and death in a valley. I call that when the philosopher is so arrogant that they teach. The valley of shadow and death is the point of life when the philosopher is so arrogant that they teach. Pause the video and take a minute to figure out what that means. Think. What do I mean by the valley of shadow and death is when a philosopher is so arrogant that they teach? Then I will explain it. You are truly a philosopher when you admit that you know nothing. You are truly a philosopher when you choose to become discipulous. When you start philosophy, you have no choice but to be discipulous. You're there to learn. You are there to learn because you want to be a philosopher. Now, when you want to be a doctor, you study and then you become a doctor and then you go be a doctor. When you want to be a teacher, you go and you study and you get your degree and then you go and you teach, much like the philosopher who's so arrogant that they teach. It is not possible to teach and learn at the same time. Actually, it is, but only a philosopher knows how to do it. Only a philosopher knows how to pull this off because the philosopher has studied the art of learning, knowledge, and education. And that is what philosophy is. It is the study of learning, teaching, and knowledge. It's all we do. day in and day out. So after 30 years of being discipulous, choosing to be discipulous because I desired to be a philosopher, I became a philosopher. And the very first thing I decided to do with my philosophy, oh, well, I got to teach. So I entered the valley of shadow and death. I taught. I lectured. I was still discipulous. And then there was this moment when silence fell 2 days ago. 6 November. Silence fell. I noticed when I was wrong. I noticed how foolish I looked, being wrong while standing on a philosopher's podium. I thought, how can I prevent that from ever happening again? How do I maintain an open mind while I teach? How do I maintain an open mind while I teach? This is the problem that people have. The moment you step on the podium as a teacher, you close your mind. That is the curse of the teacher. Now, a philosopher says, how do I keep an open mind while I teach? In psychology, we have something called authority, power, and control. Authority is basically your advantage. You have authority when you have the advantage. That's what authority is. Having the advantage gives you power. Power to control. Control is a verb. It is not a noun. People who don't understand that control is a verb abuse control. They project their need to control by turning it into a noun. So if you are using control as a noun, you're actually not in control. That's an oxymoron. Because people who are actually in control use it as a verb. So the minute you've nouned out the word control, you have an oxymoron and you have a delusion. You don't get to control unless you master authority, which is your advantage. Now, there's 2 ways you can have your advantage. This is really important to philosophy. When you have your authority, you can use it to help people, or you can use it to harm people. Actually, when you have authority, you can use it to help yourself by helping others, or you can use it to help yourself by harming others. Now, when you choose to harm others with your authority, you actually lose authority. You lose your disadvantage or your advantage. And that's actually a projected version of the noun control. You don't actually have authority at all. Because if you could control people, you would just be authoritative. But people don't understand that. So they use fear and terrorism, thinking that that is authority. And it's not. Authority, real authority, is when you absolutely are authentic. You wield your greatness and your advantage. And people are inspired to listen and follow. But how do you teach and keep an open mind? So, in the 11th perspective, I learned gifting. I learned that gift and forgiveness is actually the act of giving up your authority in exchange for exposing your vulnerability to people who abuse you. It was extraordinary. I have a partner who I love to pieces, and here is I. In many things, he is at the advantage, and in other things, I am at the advantage. In mental health, I have the advantage, which means in mental health, between the 2 of us, I have the authority. Now, in order to make him feel comfortable, I have to assume a lesser role, an unauthoritative role with psychology to make him feel safe. Because my vulnerability will rise him up and make him feel better, make him feel safer. So I have to literally gift him with my authority by giving up my own authority, assuming a role of vulnerability so that he doesn't feel threatened. This is forgiveness. When you are a philosopher with the advantage of knowledge and you seek to nurture your students, because you have the advantage, you must forgive them. Give up your education and your knowledge. Assume the role of student to show them through mimicry and repetition what a student is supposed to act like. It keeps your mind open and it allows you to teach. So you are both student and teacher at the same time. It means you have to get on the floor and play with Play-Doh alongside the children. If you want the children to learn, you must set the example. And if you want them to be sharing kind, you need to share in kind. You need to stop lording over them with either your height or your authority. And you have to bring yourself down so you look at them literally and metaphorically at eye level. Put them above you so they know how they are supposed to treat the people below them. This is really, really vital. When you put yourself below a child, the child gains the perspective of an adult. But they've got you right there, so they're safe. And they look at their new world through the adult point of view. Wow, mommy and daddy are so much smaller than me. Look at me, I'm in charge. That's the way their little minds thinks. It's so cute. That's it exactly. And this doesn't leave us with age. We keep this our entire lives, which is why some men are like, oh, look at me, I'm so big and strong. And they puff out their chest and they amplify how tall they are because we're kids inside. We are children. We are still children. We are all still children. There is no age here. We're all still in the playpen. So 2 days ago, I realized that I am officially a philosopher now. And the best place for me is to behave like a student and forgive my discipulus by assuming the role of discipulus. And I just went, oh my God, do I feel home? And then I thought I need to rebrand the garden. The healing garden is not the right message. So I went on my YouTube account here. I changed the name to the Philosophy Journals. I was debating on the Philosopher's Journals, but I like the Philosophy Journals. And I have the Philosopher's Fountain for my subscription newsletter. I have a community campfire where I basically teach people through, it's kindergarten for adults. It's a variety hour. We use games. It's a full, like, it feels like you're camping and it feels like kindergarten in one. There you go. It feels like camping and kindergarten in one. Oh my God, it's so happy. Kindergarten camp for adults. And it's all done. It's strategic. It's basically the first ethic. I'm probably going to have 12 different programs. So you can literally jump into whichever program you want. And it's going to be, each program is going to be cultivated to fit each perspective. So, oh, you need to learn this? Well, this is what you need. And then as you go through the 12 camps, oh, I'm so doing this. Literally, I'm probably just going to do camps. You know what? I really love this idea. I love this idea. And it's basically going through the 12 camps. And each camp is going to teach you a new ethic. And because it takes you back to when you were a childhood, you go through the healthy growth, but it's camp because who doesn't fucking love camping, right? It's camp. So it's going to be basically kindergarten camp for adults. And I will be taking you through first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, which is really all the different perspectives. But it's going to be structured after Plato's work, which is designed to cultivate how we're supposed to learn effectively. Wouldn't it be awesome if all school was just camp year round? Camp. Camp was fun. I never got to go to camp. My brother did, of course. My oldest brother got to go to like 2 years of camp. I never did. It was like a long dream of mine of, I want to go to camp. And I just never was allowed. Oh, that still gets my goat. No, I'm gonna do it. Camp. And I remember even my mom once, she went to an adult camp and it was the only time she did it. In 20 years, she was married to my dad. It was one summer. She went for a week-long adult camp. And it was like, what the hell? So I've never been to camp. And then my girlfriend, she got to go to camp every year. She went to music camp. So then she came back and she was like, oh yeah, this is what we did. And I'm like, you know what camp is? Camp was school that was fun. That was VBS. That was Vacation Bible School. It was camp that was fun. Yeah, fun. It's school with fun. That's what camp was. It was school with fun. Someone said, you know what? We should do school and we should make it fun. Yeah. So that's going to be my university. It's going to be Camp Anna, Camp Imagination. Why? This is my calling. This is my calling. This is it. So yeah, I have this massive coming together of all of these things. It's all just like, and I went, oh, there's my name. I am the philosopher. And I am just, I want to do a commencement. I want to do like a, yeah, this is easily the most, my greatest accomplishment is this right now. It is this moment when it's like, I know it because I'm reading Victor Hugo and it's the first, I used to revere these men. I still revere these people, except now I'm looking at them and I see my peers. That's the difference. When you read Ayn Rand and you're going, she's my peer. When you read Nathaniel Branden and I'm sitting here, you know, it's so funny. When I picked up this book, this was my first thought, Nathaniel Branden, I know that name. Mind you, this is 20 years after I studied Ayn Rand psychology. So I'm reading this thing and I'm going, oh my God, no way. And I remembered a boy, a young man in his 20s, studying philosophy and psychology under Ayn Rand at the California University where Ayn Rand taught philosophy. And then I went, oh my God, no way. And I pulled out my Passion of Ayn Rand, compared notes, and went, oh my God, this is the same Nathaniel Branden. So then I'm sitting and I'm like, I had a moment when I was reading this book. I went, oh my God, he made it. Good for you, Nathaniel. And like I said, Nathaniel, I've been calling him Nathaniel for like 20 years. No, for 30 years, I've been calling him Nathaniel. So he's Nathaniel in my head, not Dr. Branden. It's Nathaniel. And for God's sakes, where is it? Where is it? Did she cut it out? Where's my copy of Atlas Shrugged? Oh, well, here. I just need a single and let me see if his name is in here. Might be his name. Oh, nope, she cut it out. Okay, so see, to Frank Connor. That's her husband, to Frank O'Connor. In the early editions of Ayn Rand's work, it was also dedicated to Nathaniel Branden. After they broke up, she had it all removed from all of her books. But if you find an earlier version of one of Ayn Rand's books, it will have the dedication to Nathaniel Branden in it. So I'm just like, oh my God, it's Nathaniel. So then I had this. I know your psychology. I studied you when I studied Ayn Rand's. I know exactly what you're suffering from. Are you somebody who's reliable? Can I really rely on your psychology to tell me about self-esteem when I know exactly what you did with Ayn Rand for 20 years? Like, I was questioning this man's ethics while he sat there and went over, this is how you handle self-esteem. So I'm going, all right, I get to this one section in here where he actually addresses his affair with Ayn Rand. And he explains the psychology he was in. He explained the psychology that Ayn Rand was in. I'm glad to know that my have a son her was correct. And yeah, he goes on quite a bit with several other areas where he addresses this is what happened to me. And he talks about his affair with Ayn Rand in here. So when I read that, it was like this massive, okay, he learned, he understood, he psychoanalyzed himself, he corrected his behavior. He's a valid source. And it was hilarious. It's one of my favorite things about this book was, I mean, it's a phenomenal book. Like, if you want to know how to do shadow work, that's it. Oh my God, do this book. This book is actually one of the 3 that I recommend for mental healing. And it was just this mind-blowing realization that, yeah, this man is my peer. And when I started going through these books and I started to see them as my peers, that was this realization of my confidence, my certainty. I just had a meeting with this lady, with this beautiful soul, an hour ago, and she said to me, "You are different." She's like, "You're confident, you are calm." She goes, "You were before, but you are like, something's different." I know exactly what she was referring to. It was the 12th perspective. It was the 11th perspective. It's wisdom. It's literally wisdom. And I want to be this sage that people revere and come to for advice. I want to be the sage of the world. That's really what I want to do when I grow up. I do. I want to be the world's sage. I want to be as revered as the Dalai Lama, but not religious, philosophical. I want to be the world's philosopher. And it's when you are at the 7th perspective studying philosophy, you think philosophy is something. And when you are at this stage of philosophy, and here's the thing, Plato knew it, Aristotle knew it, Christ knew it. And they kept it a secret. And I understand why. This is fucking dangerous knowledge. If you have the ethics in place to wield this power. Now, for some reason, Plato hoarded this knowledge. I don't understand why. Now, I understand that Rome used it for their evil, and they did, and we have a lot to recover from. But it's like this. I can see it. I can see it so clearly. And I was the missing piece. Like, I had my vision, and I thought it was the healing garden, and I realized, no, I'm the missing piece. My own humility got in my way of my own accomplishment. I was so lacking of any kind of pride, confidence, arrogance that I refused to put myself in the picture when I envisioned the healing garden. I had to cure my humility. So I had to give myself, 10th perspective, a massive dose of arrogance so that I would swing the other way, so that I would experience the humility, or I'm sorry, the arrogance, and then settle down into a place of balanced confidence. And going, okay, now I'm in the picture. I am the key piece here. And I realized with people coming and talking to me that it was my words that they looked for. It was my philosophy. It was my mindset. It's not my writing. It's not my podcast. It's me. And it was this massive sudden realization that I am the commodity. I am. Now, when I was writing my books, I had no problems with this. But with philosophy, it's been a roadblock of mine from day one because of the surplus of humility. So it's this, with the naming, when you finally find your name, it's this sudden realization of your status, your responsibilities. It's just an accumulation of all of that. And suddenly it's going, okay, I'm not a mental health healer. I'm not a psychologist. I am bringing to you the handbook of life. Everyone's going, well, there isn't a handbook. Oh, yes, there is. And I've got it here. And I'm making it. It's the handbook of life. Does it work? Look at my life. I used to be a slave. Look at where I am now. I'm a living example of my work. I am the first testimony that my work works. I love to say to people, I talk big, I walk big, but I deliver. And that's really bottom line. I've had people just like, wow, you're arrogant. I've had other people going, wow, excuse you. I deliver every time. And that's the difference. There's a lot of, you can talk big, you can walk big, but if you can't deliver, you need to shut your mouth. Oh, I deliver. And that sets me apart. That's it right there. It's knowing your self-worth. And that's really what this is. That's what you get when you find your naming is your self-worth. That's why I took myself off of social media and suddenly made myself scarce, because my self-value, my sudden realization of what I really am just went through the roof. And I'm going, yeah, I am. Yeah, I know what I am. I know exactly who I am. So it was also partly an understanding it, and it was interesting. It was this mindset. I had this, oh, I can feel it shifting. Shift, yes, please shift this one away. Oh my God, yes. I can feel my ethics just, oh, more talk. Oh my God, I love this. Okay, so I got to explain it. So my cognitive core is shifting right now. I can feel it. And I located a limiting belief right here. There are two people who I was always cowering to. My brother, who I no longer talk to, and my partner. Now, my partner would never put me in this kind of a position. This is all in my head, and I know that. But I cowered from my partner because I revered him. And we would have our marital, fuck it. We would have our marital arguments. And I would get to this point with him where it would be the same repeated behavior. Oh, fuck it, I'm so owning this marital. So we would have our marital spats and we would have that conflict. And I know the psychology of it. All right, so you pull away, you chill down, then you come back together. And there's a lot of confusion of, well, what's love? Well, what love should be? Love should always be stable. No, all of you shut up. All of you shut up. I think I'm going to say that a lot now. All of you shut up. Let's think and ask questions. Because we've done it everyone's way, right? I'm right there with you. Victor Hugo had a gorgeous little thing there on this is love. So let's talk about this. We got John Lennon going, all you need is love. And you've got a whole lot of people saying, oh, that's toxic romance. And you've got other people going, think about yourself, cut them loose. And there's so much opinion of it. Oh my God, the opinions. So many people advising everyone, oh, he's bad for you. Oh, red flag, you get away from that girl. What the fuck? We are way too fast to throw away people. We are way too fast to throw away people. How about we problem solve? How about we problem solve? Are we going to problem solve it or are we going to throw it away? That's what a divorce is. What do you value? What are your priorities? Now, I have a man and I love him 2 pieces. And we cannot figure out how the fuck to get along. We have been through fucking shit together. And we still talk every day. We have found every way to reject and abuse each other. That's not true. Reject each other, yes. This is just a bunch of rejection. We reject prematurely to make sure the other person can't reject us. That's what we do. We prematurely reject. Premature rejeculation. That's what we're dealing with. That is exactly what we're dealing with. I'm going to write this down. Premature rejection. And when it's all done and said after the rejection, we problem solve and we stay. And then the next thing comes up and we have premature rejection and we start problem solve and stay. And he's saying to me, we're not married. You're my ex-girlfriend. but then he'll problem solve and he'll stay. Because his brand of mental illness does not allow him the titles or the labels that comes with the relationship, because that's his trauma trigger. So like I said, we're constantly tripping over each other's things, and and he's so fucking smart. So we're trying to outsmart each other. And I had that moment yesterday, 2 days ago, where I just went, I'm not going to explain my behavior to you anymore. I'm just not. If you want to know, then you can ask. But I'm not explaining myself to you anymore. And things went right back to everything being fine. Everything is fine. But I'm not going to sit here and explain my behavior. Because he doesn't have the knowledge and the education to understand my choices. And suddenly, on this, I saw where I had the advantage. And I just went, now that's authority. It's a simple comprehension of, if I were to explain this to you, could you understand it? Or do you need to be explained? And I realized, when you have to explain your behavior over and over again, you either are doing it to be understood, or you are doing it to teach. And if you're doing it to be understood, it's because they lack the education. So the option is educate. He needs to become uneducated. But if I'm explaining it to him, so I felt things shift. I felt my masculine energy and my feminine energy, whatever the hell that means, shift. I really don't know what masculine or feminine energy is. That just makes, energy does not have a gender, not at all. There's no penises or vaginas located on the energy. So I really don't understand what this energy is with it being a girl and a boy. I don't get it. I call it nurturer provider energy, and that's all inside of us. So I really don't understand. I just don't. Now, I can tell you there's a positive and a negative energy and a neutral energy. And I can feel that it shifted. Like I can feel the whole thing just shift. So that and I can feel rejection and acceptance. I can feel hoarding and releasing. That's the kind of energy I feel. I have this massive, sudden solidifying, I know who I am. So I am a philosopher. Oh yeah, I'm owning it now. And my expertise is life. Life. Yeah, you know, the dumbest fucking thing that the world has ever done was destroy Alexandria. We talk about burning books being bad, but no one ever talks about the library of Alexandria being burned. And no, that was a museum. It was not a library, it was a museum. People do not know what was inside Alexandria. So the concept of it being burned, what we lost when that thing went down, we lost 3 primary subjects of study that the world has forgotten. 3 primary subjects of study: perspectives, learning, and the transmutation of knowledge, transportation of knowledge, and how to teach. How to teach, how to learn, and perspectives. Those are the 3 subjects that actually covers philosophy. It's like somebody took philosophy, opened up the last book, and just ripped out the entire ending and said, there you go, that's philosophy. But you lost the conclusion. We lost all of it. So people will study it and piece it back together again, like Ayn Rand, like Nathaniel Branden. But they've missed the point. Oh my God, have they missed the point? I am so looking forward to the next few stages of my life. Thank you, and may the kindest of words always find you.